Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Spotlight on CS Ops. I'm here with my co-host, Matthew Lin, over in Austin. Hi, Matthew.
Hello, Jean.
And today we have the wonderful opportunity to talk to Maria Isaak. Maria Isaak currently works in customer success operations at PTC, but previous to that, she worked at Absolute Software and also at Hootsuite. Maria is located in Vancouver, just a few hours away where I live. And so it's really great to have you on the show, Maria. Welcome.
Thanks. Happy to be here.
Maria, it's such a pleasure to meet you for the first time. I love the way that our community just creates connections and expansions in our network. So tell me and tell our audience more about you, whether that's how you got into CS Ops or what you do when you're not CS Opsing. Let us know about Maria.
For sure. Oh, okay. Well, hi everyone. I'm Maria Isaak. A little bit about me. So Canadian, born and raised, been here my whole life, haven't really moved around much. When I'm not working, you can find me either going to the local F45 gym with my husband or doing crazy hit activities at that gym or
They're hardcore. I have not done an F45, but I've watched and I was like, I don't think so. Not for me. So hardcore, Maria.
thank you. It's not like a true CrossFit, but definitely does get your heart rate up. So you can catch me either doing that or I'm catching up on my latest TV show, whatever that may be. I'm rewatching One Tree Hill right now. I know. I'm a teenage girl at heart. But so that's me outside of work. But yeah, like John said, I'm currently a senior program manager at customer success program manager at PTC. Been here for about just over 2 years now. And my primary focus is, of course, supporting the CSM team here, working on two major streams of projects, if you will. One is around ensuring the CSMs adopt a software, I'll say Gainsight, using Gainsight and adopting it because it is something that we're trying to get them to use a little bit more. And then on the other hand, also helping develop CS plays, so helping to make them a little bit more efficient with their day-to-day activities. So, yeah.
How did you
Awesome.
how did you get into CS Ops? Like, what is your journey? I know you started at Hootsuite, I think, as a CSM, right? So,
So actually, my journey is a little bit interesting. So when I started let's go as far back as Hootsuite, I was actually started as an SDR or sales development representative at
and was that your first job out of university
I
or
think that was my second job. So I was part of that cohort that graduated university during the great, what was it called? Recession, during the recession. So when it was time when it was a little bit challenging to find a job. So Hootsuite was my second job. Um, and doing that was sales development representative or enterprise development representative. And so I was responsible for doing at one point inbound calls and then outbound calls. So outbound calls being like cold calls, and learned very quickly that while I do like talking to people, I'm not very good at trying to close sales and all of that good stuff. And my boss identified that with me as well at the time, and he suggested that I join a team of social media coaches, which were basically like little product, like we're kind of like product trainers, but could train customers in 15 minutes or less on a particular feature, product, what have you. So I joined that team, and then within that team, they were kind of a small but mighty group where they were responsible for a large group of customers because they touched base on the freemium. Hootsuite's like a freemium model, right? So we touched on our free and professional group bucket of customers, not our enterprise. But through that, in order for you to do things, you had to do things at scale. You didn't have a choice. And so that's what was really interesting for me, because you had those one-on-one engagements, but then there was also how that one-to-many. So one-to-many being like we had to facilitate webinars. We also had programs where people who were interested in enterprise, but then they were still on pro. So how do we bring them to see the value of going up to the next level? We had intercom, so that was like our live chat. So we had a lot of different programs that we ran, that each of us ran, and through that was actually like my first taste of, I guess, like project or program management, if you will, because we had to really take something, do something with these group of customers and see if it worked. And so through that, was with them, and then things happened at Hootsuite. We had a little bit of a restructure, and then that's where we joined the enterprise customer success organization. And that's when I really got into more of a CS ops type of lead position, because I had moved from, I was running all these programs at our pro level. And then now we're joining the enterprise org. It's like, okay, well, do similar things, but for the enterprise org. So that's how I got into CS ops, where it was really, I cheekily, it was like, I was doing it and it was fun, and then I couldn't stop doing it. Like, so that's what
It took
happened.
you right in, didn't it?
It took me right
Many
in.
of us.
It's like, yeah. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. I'm always surprised at the number of roles a person could have inside CS ops. It is not a one-dimensional thing where it's like, oh, you're in CS ops, so you obviously do this one thing, and all people with that title do this one thing. You were a program manager. So what did your day-to-day look like? Like were you hands-on keyboard for a lot of things, or were you running the orchestra? What does a program manager mean in this context?
So I would say during my time from being at Hootsuite and to now at PTC, it was a little bit of both. So at Hootsuite, it was both, we needed someone hands-on keys within Gainsight, but simple, nothing like complex that I've seen other true Gainsight admins have been creating. Mine was simple, like, can we create playbooks? Can we actually send out one-to-many communication using something like Journey Orchestrator? Can we basically that? It was just very simple engagements. So I had to do some hands-on keys, but then there was also the other part of, okay, well, what does this actually look like for the CSM? So the process, what do they have to do? What is the customer going to get? And then when the customer comes back to the CSM, what are we expecting them to do? And how do we ultimately measure that? That's really where I see where I progressed towards more of that program management. So that's really where it brings me to here today with PTC and what we're calling CS Plays, where we're really trying to, while I don't do the hands-on keys with Gainsight, I work very closely with IT to make sure, okay, we're developing a play. This is the business objective. These are the steps that we think we want the CSM to do, which would be then in the form of a playbook or a success plan or what have you. Help me build this. These are the particular metrics that we're trying to measure. And then either right now, I build with help from others on the reports on Gainsight based on how we've designed the play. So still a little bit of everything, I guess.
That though, and I mean, I think what you're describing as well, and knowing PTC a little bit, there's kind of a separation between those that are actually doing the business systems or operating the business systems, and then like yourself, where you're playing a much more closer role to the business, helping define like, what are the plays and the playbooks, and then working with IT to kind of develop those. It sounds like you probably spent a lot of time engaging stakeholders and managing stakeholder requests, and like, trying to figure out balance between priorities and all that across CS. Like, how do you do that in your day-to-day? Like, is there any certain strategies that you use to kind of work together with the people that you have to work with?
Yeah. So one of the strategies that we have is we meet with the business. So in this case, it's our stakeholders are our VPs of customer success, and we established bi-weekly meetings with them to specifically talk about each play or the play that we're running. So before we talk about, there's a couple of two components. So there's the prioritization, which my manager and the leaders, they go through. And then once they've identified, this is a list of tasks or objectives that business problems that we're trying to solve, then that goes to me, who works with the business saying, okay, that's what you said you wanted. Now we're going to design Tell me what you really want. And that happens within the 2 week, meets every 2 weeks. And there's all these checks and balances. So it's the 2 weeks of validating, okay, this is what you want. This is what the approach can be. And then we work on 4 ingredients really for CS plays. It's what are your instructions? Who's your target list? What are your metrics? And what's your rollout plan? So we keep it pretty simple to the 4 things. And we talk, once we get the idea, we then work with, we have identified people within the community, or I should say within the organization that we work with, to come up with those 4 ingredients. Then from there, there's certain checkpoints where we have to meet with leadership to say, okay, these are the instructions, aligns still with what you're looking for. These are the metrics. And once we get through that, and it's interesting, I actually had like, that's what you want. That's what we've established as terms of like how it should work. But things change. And with that, sometimes you need to have, like, I threw in an emergency meeting this past Monday that goes out of our regular biweekly because, well, we still want to be able to deploy next week, but we wanted to make some changes. So, and leadership's aware of that. We just want to make sure that we're always aligned. So the idea is that constant communication is the strategy.
Always constant communication. Someone told me the other day, Matthew, don't worry about over communicating yet. We'll tell you if you do that. Until then, assume we have to keep communicating. Something struck me as you were talking, Maria, which is that you have a plan. You usually have a process for your process, or you have a plan. Like the 4 things that you're like, this is what we're going to either expect you to provide, or we're going to come out with. And I think that's so valuable because, I've been guilty of this. We sometimes get into this, just bang out the task, make the improvement in the software, or quick get the report, export it, send it off. And so I think having that plan does a couple things. One, it gives you a structure so people know what to expect when they are coming to you or your team for help. But then the other thing is when you have to divert, which you also mentioned, okay, we have to adjust our plan a little bit. You actually have a plan for that too. Yeah, okay. There will be times where we've got to push ahead or slow down or whatever. And we're even planning for that. And so I find that so interesting and valuable to have that stuff sort of set up ahead of time.
Yeah, it's the 4 ingredients have been really helpful. And then for CS plays, they're pretty new here at PTC. So we're learning by doing. So it started off as, well, the play team plus leadership, we're all just going to work and see if the information and the requirements really can be done with this small group. What we found after a couple of launches is, hey, we actually need more director input. We need more CSM feedback before we actually do launches. So we've made sure that there's all those, on top of the 4 ingredients, there's all these other additional checks and balances that we need. So other people to work with us, maybe we need to pilot something before we actually deploy it to go live. Those are learnings that we developed over time because of, well, I mean, when you fail, you learn. So that's what happened. We have I've had my share of deployments where they didn't go as well as you want them to, and I learned from it, and then we adjust our process, and then it makes it better each time.
That's great. I echo, some of the sentiment that Matt was sharing as well. Like, just love the fact that there's a bit of structure. So much of what we do is all about driving change in CS ops. So, making sure that people are aware of what's happening is so critical. Is that something that when you look back into your history and, you started at Hootsuite and CS ops, and is that something that if we were to look at Maria, back then versus now, is that something that you started really early on in your career at CS ops, or is it something that you learned along the way through trial and error, or how did that
learned over time? For sure. It was, I was very much like similar to what Matt was saying, where it started off as just get the task done, just build the report, just help the CSMs and go, go, go. And that's great because, ultimately they're the ones that need to execute it. So you want to make sure that they understand it. But along the lines, I've learned, and I'm continuing to learn, is we do want to think a little bit more. Like, what are we trying to measure? What's the overall outcome that we're trying to do by having them do said task? So thinking a little bit, I don't want to say bigger, but like a little bit not so heads down, that has definitely been something that I've learned over time. So if I could tell past Maria, early on in her CS ops journey, it definitely would have been yeah, don't just be so fixated on the instruction. Think about all of the ingredients and make sure that everyone is aligned. Because that's also something that can always misalignment is definitely something that can always, derail any type of project or process improvement you're trying to deploy.
Mhm.
Such great input, Maria, and we hear that a lot from each other. It's like, okay, you don't have to deliver, you don't have to be the order taker, you don't have
Mhm.
to deliver exactly what was asked, and yet a lot of us are like, yeah, driven by that punch list. And somebody said, and I can't recall who it was now, like more likely than not, if you're in a CS ops role, you got hired for your expertise, not exclusively for your production value. And so bring your expertise. That's part of why you're there. That's part of why we're in this newer field called CS ops is we know stuff. We know things. And so, we should feel free to leverage ourselves in service of a broader plan.
Yeah, I love that.
So if you were starting out again, outside of what you just described,
Mhm.
for the next generation that's coming into this field, is there anything that like any resources or I don't know, places where you learned some of these things? Like, did you do any change management courses or anything like that?
Yeah, so there's two things that I would recommend. One would be to learn about change management, like, because that's really when we think about CS ops and what are we trying to do, all of it, most of it, if not all of it, is a change. So we need to be really good at being those change makers and how to communicate effectively, both within the CSMs and outwards. So that's something that I would recommend. And understanding change management is really, really understanding why is what's going to what are the behaviors that prevent someone from changing, and what do we have to do to help them change. So I would definitely recommend that. And then the other thing, which is something that you've told me many times and I need to do still, is to actually become more technical. So understanding, especially if you're working with products like Gainsight or even Salesforce or any other of those systems, it is helpful to understand even a little bit about how that system works. I've found that that's been really helpful, especially when I'm working with IT, who, again, like I'm no longer hands-on keys, but I can understand and speak to what I need. And we can translate things a little bit better with each other.
Yeah, I think it's so critical to be able to, you said it, like translate. If you don't know what language the other person's speaking, it's really hard to translate.
It becomes so challenging, and I've seen it in other meetings where I know what they're trying to say, but it gets confusing because we're using different languages.
Mhm.
So those would be the two things that I would recommend for someone if they are thinking about going into CS ops or diving into it. Yeah.
Some input, change management, and improving technical skills. I don't think you can go wrong there at all. Give us, I'll give you two directions you could go here, Marie. Give us a win or give us a fail. And it doesn't even have to be like something you personally have won or failed, but just like as you look out over the CS ops landscape or your experience, tell us something like that was really done well. You should do more of that. Or conversely, or like you observed or even participated in something that didn't go as planned and that was a big learning experience.
Oh, I'll share my learning. And
Okay.
this was one of my big learnings that I learned, I would say last year, was I deployed my first CS play, and I came from a background where um with the CSMs, we deployed the play, they understood the assignment, and they just ran with it. The challenge that we have that I didn't realize was as big as it thought was I deployed a play, but I did not get enough alignment and buy-in from all the other stakeholders. So got some alignment from the top, a little bit of, but then like probably next to no alignment from like the middle. So if we don't have that, then that was one of the biggest learnings. It's why we need to add more people to contribute to how we design our plays, because I thought I thought I had hit the mark. I thought I had everything designed. I'd worked with CSMs directly, and we'd spent months creating a play. It's like, okay, this is going to work for us. And it failed because, wait, if I didn't get alignment, because I didn't get alignment from essentially their bosses, then of course they didn't do it. They understood it, but it then becomes, well, is it prioritized? Well, no. So that was probably one of the biggest learnings that I had was, while again, going back to change management, it's like, I have to make sure that I have prepared to change not only the CSM, but literally every single person that is going to be impacted by this. So that was my biggest learning so far.
I like that. I think if we asked around the room here, how many of us on this call have launched a playbook and it not gone successfully, or exactly the same exact thing that you just described, where you launch it and then as everyone's like, yeah, no thanks. Like we would all, I'd have my hand up as high as possible. I'm sure, Matthew, you've also experienced that.
Undoubtedly. Yes.
We all think something's going to work, and then, oh, sorry, didn't work out. Not enough buy-in or not enough alignment. And I really appreciate that you were talking about, like, you got to bring people along. I think it's so important. Sometimes it feels like there's too many meetings, but it does help a lot just getting people to come along with the flow and get it, come with the new changes instead of just being receivers of all that. So yeah, I really like your comments. Is as Matt was saying, like any lessons, you shared like a lesson learned. Any predictions or thoughts for the future for yourself and where you want to go, or where you think CS Ops is going?
Oh man, that's a big question. So for me, I'm really for me, like what's next in my journey at CS Ops, I'm really happy with what I'm learning right now. But I think if I were to think 5 years down the line, I really want to become more specialized in I know we're calling it like the change part, but it's the deployment part. So really wanting help with the adoption, the enablement, all of so we planned it, we've deployed it, we've launched it. The hypercare part is really what I really want to double down on and come up with some crazy cool process that could hopefully help and be repeatable to really help drive change more efficiently. Because right now the challenge that I'm seeing with all the things that I'm currently doing is we're changing and we're communicating and people get it. But now it's okay, so what's next? How do we make sure that they keep doing it? How do they make sure that they understand it still? That's really the part that I want to get better at. I don't have like a title per se of where I want to go next, but that's really the next, I guess, nugget that I want to crack of like, how do I actually get people to adopt with ease is really the thing that I'm trying to get at.
Adopt with ease. Okay, so coin that one. Go trademark it or something. I think that's got some legs.
Yeah, hopeful. Yeah, I like that. I just came up with that now.
I like it too. Well, Maria, it's been such a pleasure getting to know you today and hearing. Thank you for sharing your input, your advice on what people should do, and where you see the field going and where you see yourself going. So it's been such a pleasure, and we thank you for spending some time with us today.
Thank you both. This was a lot of fun.